Hi everyone, this is Kimber, the Study Abroad Specialist here, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about whether or not you will be required to take the COVID-19 vaccine to study abroad in 2022 and beyond. So before we jump into the video, go ahead and click the like button and click the subscribe button. I know that you may not like what I'm going to have to say, but please like the video and go ahead and subscribe. As you probably know, I release videos every Friday, mostly every Friday. I try to. And this channel is all about study abroad, preparedness, and really is just my way of being able to give study abroad advice for all that I have learned, and also for kind of a sneak peek of what I share with my members in the Live, Study, Learn Abroad Association. So the first kind of thing to tackle, I think that we need to think about this from a strategic lens of what you can do, because as we know, with everything that we've been dealing with, there are so many different rules. So I think that the first thing to sort of think about is, what type of program are you going to be doing? Because that right there could determine whether or not you have to have it. And this video, I think, is much more tailored to students who are out there, whether you're in high school or primary or secondary school, or if you're in college or university, or if you're in graduate school and you are still, either on the fence or you have decided at this time not to receive the arm candy. Again, I am not here to pass judgment on anyone. As I've said in previous videos, I still feel like it should be a personal decision. Everyone has to make that choice for themselves. But I think when we're talking about things like study abroad, you have to sort of think about, how that's going to align with whatever options you've decided on. And so the first thing is what type of program you are doing. I think that that's going to be important. If you are someone who is studying through your college or your university, depending on what their rules are, you may be required to take it. Now, I know, for example, there's a lot of students right now, I can specifically talk about here in the US, but I know that this is happening across the board in a lot of, countries like the UK, like Ireland, like Germany, where there's all this different discussion of whether or not specifically college and university students should be required to have it. There are some schools that are flat out requiring it. There are some schools that are saying that you don't have to take it if you don't want to, but let's say you have to be tested every week and you can't participate in certain events, like, going to, mass size events on campus. And, there are some countries and places where they're doing just full out verification checks and everyone has to have it. So it's all over the board, like everything has been for this health ordeal. But I think that will kind of determine the first step in terms of whether or not you'll need it, because they will have their set of rules. And again, it also may, factor into say maybe they will allow students to study abroad, but you will have to do extra things. So you could, if you're part of, your school's program, you may have to test every single week. You may have to, quarantine and miss out on some of the events. So they should be very clear with you about that. So I think that when you're looking for a program or you're trying to figure out what program you're going to do, if that is concerning to you, and if you are someone who's not taken the jab or is still trying to figure out if you want to do that, but you really want to study abroad, that kind of needs to be your first question, just to kind of figure out what are the parameters around that. Are they going to be really strict about it? Is it something where they're going to be, definitely mandating it? Or, is it something where you're going to have some other options up to you? I'm hoping that there is something where you can find a balance. I think that this is something across the board that even a lot of workplaces, here in the States, in other countries as well, are kind of going through. And so I think that will kind of serve the same way in universities and colleges and high schools and secondary schools, because again, those are also workplaces too. And so they have to find a balance of what's going to work for their staff and for the faculty and also for the students. But again, every organization has different rules. So you definitely want to understand what the individual rules are for whatever program you're doing. The second part of this to consider, which is it's sort of on equal footing with the first part that I mentioned, and it's sort of unfortunate that it can kind of cancel it out. So even if, let's say, for example, you are a student who you're here in the US and you want to go study abroad in France. And so, and again, I'm talking like right now where there's not specific details, because again, everything is still kind of new. There's a limited amount of students studying abroad worldwide right now, obviously. Like in 2022, they are planning to ramp it back up a little bit if they can. But in 2021, there have been successful programs happening all throughout the world, but they've been on a smaller scale. I will link the video below where I talked more about that. But in terms of the kind of second caveat to link on from the first point is, you may be at a school, let's say here in the US, where they are not requiring any type of, immunization information. They don't care whether or not you got the jab. They're not requiring that for you to study abroad. However, you may be going to a place, let's say like France, which has basically already announced that, they want everyone to a certain extent to get it. And so we would be, kind of fooling ourselves if we thought that that did not mean that that included students coming from other countries. If anything, they want to make sure that people coming from outside, have what they need to have. And again, I'm not just picking on France. Like, there are other countries that have sort of said the same thing, or said that they are looking towards the same thing, or that they are considering the same thing. And I know, for example, like here in the States, it's so different because we have like the separation of the federal government and the state government. So I'm not going to get into all of that, but that's a little bit different than what some other countries have, where they can just say, everyone's doing it, that's it. We're lucky that we don't have that here for a lot of reasons. But I think that that's another thing that you need to consider, because that could really impact you if you have decided at this time, or maybe not at all, that you don't want the jab. And again, I'm not judging you, but I'm just saying that if you have decided that, and your school, your current, institution that you're at is fine with it, that works out. But then when you go to say, well, actually, in order to get your visa, in order to get all these other things, the host country that you're going to, they want to see it. That is where you're going to run into some roadblocks. And that is where you're going to have to make, some tough choices. It could be where, number one, maybe you change where you want to go. That is perfectly acceptable. In my mind, I don't imagine that every single country on earth is going to require this. And of course, as we know, this is ever changing. So by the time we get into mid 2022, looking towards, summer programs for 2022, fall programs for 2022, and 2023 and beyond, it could be different. But I think just particularly for students who are looking to study abroad in 2022, particularly in the spring, but I'm just imagining that it's going to be a hot topic for next year, definitely. So you want to understand what your host country is doing. So you want to just keep abreast of that. So again, as you know, as I keep saying that everything keeps changing so quickly, and obviously we all know that, it means that, for example, maybe you want to take a chance and just go ahead and apply and secure everything. And then it just means that if whatever happens, let's say you get it to the point where you're like, maybe 6 weeks before departure, it's not looking like they're going to be relaxing those rules. You're going to have a decision to make, but you also don't want to be in a space where maybe they end up relaxing the rules and saying, after all, we don't want people to have that. And you would have missed out on a chance to go. I think that's probably one of the most frustrating things for most people. I know that from an adult perspective, just kind of talking to people that I know, that, this is something that a lot of adults around the world, especially here in the US, are dealing with, of not really knowing what to do, because they have at this time made the decision not to get it. And right now, in the majority of our states here and the majority of our cities here, it's not mandated for everyone, but people are feeling like that, hammer might come down at some point, but they're feeling like, well, if I feel for whatever reason, whether it be religious reasons or personal reasons, again, like I could do an entire video on the arm candy and the importance of nuance in this discussion, and the fact that there are millions and millions of people meeting at a point that have decided for whatever reason that they do not want to get it, and that it is not just some kind of crazy conspiracy. And I won't get into all of that here, but I think that there needs to be just more talk about the nuance of that. There are so many people from so many different groups, so many different walks of life that have decided that it's just too soon for them, after 20 months to put something in their arm that they do not feel comfortable with. And I want you to just understand that I see you and I understand that. It doesn't matter what choice I have personally made. I want to make you understand that I understand where you're coming from and that I'm not one of these people that is just completely dismissive. So having said that, I think that, again, for number 2, when you're thinking about it, you just need to understand what your host country is doing and need to just kind of figure out, like, have they made that final decision, talking with your program advisor and the people who are helping you get into the program, like, do they think that there's going to be some leeway on that, or is there a final decision? Because that is going to help shape whether or not you go to the country that you first decided on, or whether you need to choose a different place. So for the third sort of thing to think about of study abroad in 2022 and whether or not you will need the arm candy is sort of, figuring out, and again, this is something that is, I guess, going to be relevant to everyone, whether or not you have already gotten it or not, is thinking, in terms of these different variants that keep coming out. So we might actually, unfortunately, be in a place where, countries start hopefully not shutting down again, but they may be closing their borders and saying they don't want, people coming in from, different places, or they could do it very targeted where they're like, well, there's hot spots, let's say in Canada, and so they can't come to the UK. I don't know. I mean, I'm just like everyone else, just trying to figure it out day by day. But that's another thing to think about, because you want to understand from your program sort of what are the protections in place if something goes wrong. So, and that is related to the jab, because again, they could have it where they're like, oh yeah, you go, let's say, like, for whatever reason, they say, well, if you want to do this program, you need the jab. And maybe you weren't against it, but you were just trying to figure out, you were waiting for the right time, or you were waiting for it to be approved or whatever it was. And you decide that you want to go get it, and then your program is canceled. That is really unfortunate. Now, they can't really do much about you actually having gotten the jab for it, but it's like, what are the sort of parameters that are in place to protect students? Now, obviously, when all of this first kind of happened unexpectedly, or mostly unexpectedly, a lot of programs are just kind of caught holding the bag, and there were so many different things happening. So many students, they got, canceled overnight, had to return home to their countries overnight. A lot of schools, unfortunately, were very naughty and, in my opinion, did the wrong thing, not giving people full refunds. That is wrong. That is unethical. It was no fault of their own to do that. And I know that a lot of schools are hard up for cash, especially here in the US, but it's like, if you're charging, $50,000 for a school every year and you have 10,000 students, you can afford to give some of that back. But anyway, I think that you want to understand what are sort of the perimeters around what their expectations are for students and what they're going to be doing also to keep people safe. So it's like, for example, even if you're someone who has decided not to take the arm candy, and they want you to get tested every week, do you have to pay for that? Does the school pay for that? How does that work? Even if you're going to, let's say, a country with free healthcare, you may not be entitled to that just because you're a student there. There are all these different types of rules. If you unfortunately get sick, not just with the C-19, but anything. And again, like, considering the fact that a lot of healthcare systems have pretty much shifted their entire focus to this thing, throughout this past year and a half, like, what does that mean for you? Like, if you do need to go to the emergency room, or you do need to go to the infirmary or whatever, like, you need to understand like what that is and what type of support system your program has in place for you. Okay, and so that is it for this video. Again, I'm sure that I will be adding more videos like this over time. As you know, and as I've said several times in this video, this is ever changing every single day. There are different things, as there have been for the past 18 months. And even, in these past 9 months, as we've been dealing with the arm candy, there's so much changing. There's new information coming out. There's just so much going on. And so I know that this will be ever changing, but I thought that this would be really helpful because I know that this is a time where students are starting to think about study abroad for the next semester. And so that would be what is considered the spring semester of 2022, which would technically start in January or February of next year, which is only a couple months away, which is crazy. But I hope that this was helpful for you. If you are a study abroad person, you're looking to study abroad, you probably have friends that are also interested in doing that. So I ask that you please share this video with them as well. I hope that they would find it useful too. If you haven't already, please like the video and please subscribe. I release videos every Friday, mostly every Friday, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.